back to Just Between Us, couch show, longer than a TikTok, shorter than a podcast. It's right what you want. For today's episode, I was thinking about the idea of like when, I don't know if you experience this, but I suspect that you do, where you feel like you're not in control of yourself anymore.
Yes. So for backstory, I have bipolar disorder. So I experience mania and
Hypomania. Can you explain the difference?
Well, I mean, it's hard because mania it is like a bit more hallucinatory or delusional, or it's like a little bit more.
Like people tend to often have to kind of be hospitalized.
Yeah, and I have hypomania, which is like it's elevated, it's feeling, I mean, there is a delusional aspect to it. You're not in control of your actions and you feel a lot of like shame about your actions, so like spending or
shame later,
over sexualizing, sort of. It's weird because to me sometimes it is like in the moment. Like if I'm texting someone I'm not supposed to be texting and I'm manic, there's a part of my brain that knows this is going to be embarrassing, but I can't, I'm just plowing through it.
Or like you can't access that
I can't access it.
Yeah.
And then Allison has obsessive compulsive disorder.
What?
You've never made any content about it, so
I know, no one knows.
No one knows. So you have compulsions that you feel like you're not in control of.
There'll be times where it's like I gotta be cleaning things, and it's like it doesn't matter what else is going on, if it's like annoying other people, if it's like socially not,
acceptable.
Yeah, but like it'll just be like I gotta do it, and it's like, oh well, I am mentally ill. Like there's like the moments of like, yep, I am mentally ill, and this is me being mentally ill, because it's this weird thing where it's like most of the time, I'm like, I feel like I'm very stable in my relationships. I'm stable in my work. I'm able to care for 2 dogs, which like, sounds like whatever. But like, if you are chronically mentally ill, it can be difficult to just kind of do daily tasks and like maintain responsibilities. And I'm lucky where I'm not, it's not at that level, but there are moments where it's like, oh yeah, I'm not in control of what's happening here. Or like to attempt to regain control would just be so distressing that we're not even going there.
But so then what do you do?
When we get home from the airport and like I have to clean everything, compulsively clean everything, it'll be like, I'll return to you in an hour.
You like, have to play it out.
Yeah, like I'll be like, I will be back to Allison in an hour, but in this period, I've got to do what I got to do to get back to baseline.
I had a couple weeks ago, because I think it's tied to the bipolar disorder, but it's tied to a lot of other things, but I have a very hard time with suicidal ideation, and I went up on my meds, so everything's happening. I'm okay. There is a lot tied to that you don't have control over, and like we talked about it on our episode of the podcast with Allison Herman about suicidal awareness and suicidal ideation, but like it's hard to explain because I think when you're not in that headspace, you're like, well, here are 5 things you can do to not kill yourself, right? But like for me, in my experience, I went on autopilot. Like anytime that I've come close to attempted, my body is moving, but my brain is not in control of it moving. So that's why I get really frustrated sometimes with the ways that that's handled, because it gives the assumption that the person is able to rationally pull back. But like, I remember being like, I'm not here. Like, I'm not there. Like, body is moving, not here. I don't have an answer to that. Like, I don't know what the answer is to that, other than like therapy, psychiatrist, up on meds. Somebody made a great recommendation actually in the comments and said that if it's hard to reach out, or you can't like fully type anything, or you're a little bit incapacitated, they were saying that they have an emoji that they send to people, and that means I'm in crisis.
Yeah.
And so if you can just force yourself to hit that emoji and hit send, someone can come help you. And I was like, that's really good advice, actually. If you're not familiar with the feeling of being out of control of your body, it is truly hard to come back from. And like you often say things like, well, your brain is lying to you. And like, it definitely is. But it just feels very out of control. And I always afterwards then feel a lot of shame for like, why did you do that? Like, why did you text that person? Why did you like spend all that money or whatever? So it's funny because you think like, oh, you get on this one path and then you're never gonna slide back. But
well, I think part of it is getting better at noticing the signs and intervening on yourself earlier.
So how do you do that?
So like when you start to notice that your brain is saying some stuff to you, like being like, oh, and like reaching out to a friend at that moment or reaching out to your therapist at that moment.
But how do you do that for OCD?
Oh, I mean, it's such a different thing. You know, depression and suicidal ideation, it's a very different thing. I mean, I've dealt with both. I think I'm more proactive now when I can feel like I'm going into a depressive episode. And I think the thing that helps me the most is knowing it's not going to last forever. Mm-hmm. A way I like to think about like mental health is it's not linear, but your goal is that over time your lows become less low. So they will still feel jarring and shocking because it's very different than your baseline. But like my lows now are not my lows when I was 26. And then having the evidence of like, well, I've had horrible lows and I've gone out of those lows before. And so sort of like when you get a cold and like, I gotta wait out this cold or but like doing some things to activate, you know, the way you would take vitamin C if you have a cold. Like, and it's really hard. But it's hard. Behavioral activation is a really great intervention. So like forcing yourself to go do a thing that you normally enjoy, even though you don't want to do it. So like that's a way, like maybe you're noticing, oh, I'm starting to pull away from people, but I'm going to fight that. And before I fully haven't left my house in a few days, I'm going to go to lunch with somebody. And kind of
so hard.
Catch it a little earlier. But I mean, when I lose control, when I feel like I'm out of control with my OCD, I mean, it is this thing, right? Because then you're sitting above yourself and you're going, oh, this is getting bad. Because I'll have a regular day, but then something will maybe make it where I'm suddenly cleaning more than usual, and then I'm on like a little kick, and then I gotta do this, and then this thing that wouldn't normally bother me is bothering me, and then it's like, oh, all right, and it's like you're watching yourself, you're like, I see what's happening here, but like you don't necessarily have the willpower to snap out of it.
Yes, exactly. What's hard with bipolar disorder too is that feeling good is also a problem. So for me, like I'm like, I'm empowered and I'm doing all this stuff and I feel good and I'm gonna make all these decisions, and then I'm like, now hold on. Like it's easier to recognize when you're depressed than it is to recognize when you're manic.
Right. Well, I even sometimes with you with certain things, I'm like, I wonder if we're entering that period, or if there is like, you know, sometimes it can be tricky where it's like, is this real Gabe or is this manic Gabe? And if so, do I have to engage with what you're saying in the same way? Do you know what I mean?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Is this something I actually have to really address because it's really you and you're genuinely concerned about this? Or is this more like a time where like in a week you won't even remember we talked about it or that it was a thing, or, you know, and it's hard. Yeah.
I have no idea. I don't know sometimes what's confidence and what's mania. So I just kind of have to ride the wave.
Yeah.
But the problem is that my problem is that it's like money related a lot of the time. So I'm like, yeah, let's fucking do it. And then it's like, you know, I have to stop and think sometimes even, okay, so this is one way of doing it, which was spending money. Maybe there's a different way to do it that isn't spending money. That's my new sort of like,
that's great.
Does it have to be this? You know, it's hard when sadness is a red flag and extreme happiness is a red flag. So then what?
Right, and like you don't want to take away your ability to feel happiness.
I know, or like to feel confident or to feel like things are moving forward. But then it's like, is it overconfidence or is it like, no, like I'm believing in myself.
But when you enter a period of mania,
yeah,
I mean, are you feeling different the whole day, or will it be like 2 hours in the day? Like, my understanding of it is like you sort of enter a period of mania and then it ends, and then with bipolar, it will often then result in going into a depressive episode. But,
yeah.
But do you?
How long could the mania last? Months? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Like, what do you think of as like the longest time you've been in like a state of mania, looking back?
Months.
Months?
Yeah, a long time.
But you're that amped up for weeks at a time?
Can be. And I don't sleep. That's the big one. There's no sleep.
Well, that's a big thing I think with you, is that I think that and I could be, I think a way to care for yourself is to be very vigilant around your sleep. Because you know that when you don't sleep, things go awry.
Yeah, and I could just not sleep for a long time.
Yeah.
I could just do that.
I think it's that same thing we all get into where it's like, well, I've been doing well, so I can skip a night of sleep, or I can have but being like, I'm doing well because I am sleeping.
Yeah, you and Melissa both did not like my party schedule one time.
Well, because you were already a mess. And then to like mess up and be out all night was going to make everything worse.
But it was a clown party.
Okay.
At a warehouse.
All right.